welcome back to this edition of Council Agenda. My name is Maura Webster, and I'm one of your co-hosts for this show, where we like to talk to our city councilors and find out exactly what their agenda is for you, the residents of the city. Later on in this episode, we will be joined by my co-host, Robert Katz, and he will be joined by Councilors Joe Delano and Don Landers as well. So first, in the hot seat, we have my very good friend, lifelong resident of the city of Marlborough, former school committeeman, and now the newest member of the City Council, Ward 5 City Councilor, Rob Seymour. Hi, Rob.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for coming on.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Anytime, anytime. So, we actually probably have the easiest job, our conversation, because as the new councilor, your head is spinning with all kinds of things that you've been campaigning on, things you want to get done, all the information you've soaked in over the past month. So, fairly softball kind of a question. What's on your mind? What's happening?
I think the first few weeks here have been a little bit of, I think the analogy I've used quite a bit is like going back to college. There's a lot of reading to do. I think there's a lot of education that I need. The phone has started to ring, and all those are quite positive. There's a lot of great things happening in the city, but I think we have a lot of good things that will be happening as well.
Fantastic. Well, I can tell you that I actually, on my voicemail, put, sorry, no longer here, please call.
Yeah.
So it should start ringing more frequently.
I'm not surprised at all.
A couple of things that I know you and I have talked extensively
Sure.
over the past few months, but some of the bigger projects happening in our neighborhoods, especially along Lincoln Street.
Yep.
I know that residents have always been interested, concerned, and very supportive of the redevelopment in that area. How do you feel about some of those projects, and what's on sort of your radar screen for the coming months?
I think the biggest one, and probably the most impending, is the Armory, or the Armory redevelopment. Right now, it's in the Urban Affairs Committee. I think, unfortunately, there has been, I don't think the project has moved as quickly. I think there have been some issues with a very clear understanding of what the developer wants to do. One thing that I think residents should certainly understand is, regardless of who is elected to this seat, they really can't participate in the matter only because they weren't seated for the public hearing, which I think makes it, it's a little bit of a difficult position to be in. Mm-hmm. And I think, in fairness, the developer was, I think, forewarned and asked to plan more accordingly until the council had been seated and they had elected to go forward. But nevertheless, there are two councils in Ward 5 who serve, both Mr. Ossing and Mr. Vigent, who are wonderful representatives, and I've spoken to Councilor Pope, who's chair of Urban. She's very much on the ball, and she is extremely knowledgeable relative to the issue. I think that's the most impending one, and people are very anxious. They want to see something happen there. I think to balance that, we want to see something happen there that's right for the neighborhood. I think the second would be the redevelopment, or I should say the vacant lot that currently exists at the corner of Mechanic and Lincoln Street. I think there's a lot of high hopes for that in the future. I know that the owner has approached the city about some potential for developing that. I think that's still yet to play itself out, but I think those are two very significant positive developments. And I think, and to your credit, I think trying to build on the momentum of what happened prior to my being there, and I think under your stewardship and with your colleagues, a lot of good has happened up there in the ward and on the corners there of French Hill. I
think you're right, and I think the momentum is still going strong. I think that some of the projects, Christopher Heights obviously opened.
Absolutely.
The artist lofts are coming along quickly, and I'm very confident that with your leadership and your guidance, you and your colleagues will now kind of see those things to fruition. I think the mentality that what happens in the inner city neighborhoods only spreads good out.
Oh, absolutely. I think one concern that we all need to be cognizant of is the pending foreclosures, and I think the foreclosure market, and I think we have made so many great strides to redevelop those buildings that we want to make sure we continue to head in the right direction. The last thing I think people want is to see the blight where houses are being boarded up. So the foreclosure market is something I think people are very cognizant of and want to keep a close eye on. In my estimation, certainly not being an economist or a realtor, but I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to say how bad it will become, but that's certainly a concern. We don't want to go down the road where we have these wonderful redevelopment opportunities happening, and right next door you have the house boarded up. That's really not a direction I think anybody wants to go.
Right. Well, speaking about finances, you folks are coming to the end of the budgeting process, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you do 2 back-to-back budgets? One on the...
I don't know what the history is, but yes, I actually did the school committee budget before leaving, and then I had the opportunity to sit through, not as a voting member of finance, but to be able to sit through the budget deliberations, and the budget itself will be voted on at the next council meeting. It's been an eye-opening experience, to say the least. And it was certainly in those 3 or 4 days where we had, I think, either at night ongoing meetings or we had a day-long finance meeting, I probably learned more about the city in those 3 or 4 days of what really goes on and the operations that take place than I had having been born and raised here. There's really some amazing things that go on, and some wonderful people.
Anything that you've taken from that budget process that, I mean, you said you obviously learned a lot, but that you think would be key to sort of share with folks? Going through the process itself, obviously as a resident, and also sitting on the council, it's a very fine line, you know, just to strike that balance of services and tax bills. But some things that, like you said, you walk away and you're like, wow.
The one thing that I kind of sort of knew before going in, but I think I really gained a better appreciation for having gone through the process, is how good of shape the city is financially. I mean, you can pick up any paper on just about any given day and see the heading of somebody looking for or having rejected a Prop 2.5 override for whatever their needs are specific to their community, or communities looking at cutting teachers, library supplies or library staffing, police, fire. It goes on and on and on. And Marlboro's not facing that. And it's certainly not to my credit sitting in this seat. It's to your credit and the council's credit for the work that have been done for years past of, I think, taking a fiscally conservative approach. That has really paid off unbelievable dividends. And when you think about what's been taking place relative to bonding and with the wastewater treatment plant, our bond rating is phenomenal. And people, investors are willing to certainly take the risk because the risk is minute from a financial perspective. The city is so positive financially that people are certainly willing to buy into those bonds. I thought that was, it was really eye-opening how well off we are. I think it's somewhat cautious optimism. At the state level, the predictions for revenues have been concerning for folks, especially for next fiscal year and the year after. And while at this point in time, I think planning-wise, we're in very good shape, I think we need to be careful not to get too far ahead of ourselves and be cautious as we look forward so that we don't, I guess, overspend and set ourselves up for failure later on. I think we want to keep that positive fiscal stability going forward.
Excellent. It's not going to be a fun few years, I don't think, but I do agree that the way things have been set up, I know that Councillor Ossing has been a phenomenal leader of sort of the finance committee and
he's
and
amazing.
all things conservative when it comes to the fiscal books. So.
He is quite amazing, and it's not just him, it's others as well. They're a phenomenal group, and I think they all, what I've learned very quickly is they all counter and complement each other in a very positive manner, and that's been great to see. And just on a personal level, they've been supportive of me and trying to get me up to speed, which I'm incredibly appreciative of because it's been quite a transition.
Well, there are all sorts of little neighborhood projects and the phone calls you get about potholes and
Yep.
fences and
Stop signs
and speeding. Real quick, because I know that our segment is almost coming to a close, but what are some of the things that you'd like to try and focus on?
I really, one thing I've really been impressed by is the work of the Code Enforcement Officer, Pam Wilderman. And I think that is in everybody's backyard about improving quality of life, which is something I take very seriously. We get copies of notices that have been sent out to folks around noise violations, around snow removal violations. And it has a very tangible effect on people's quality of life. She actually works very collaboratively with the police department to track those. She works with the fire department and other agencies within the city to make sure that they're taking a real comprehensive look about these issues. So it's not just one person working individually, it's several people working on perhaps one individual site or one individual homeowner who is a problem. That, I think, has been a huge payoff, and I am extremely supportive of the efforts, and as we move forward of potentially expanding those, but as appropriate. I think we're moving in the right direction. We brought in a half-time person to support her effort, to support her administrative functions, but we're certainly headed in the right direction. I think people overwhelmingly have been very supportive of that office.
Fantastic. Pam is a great resource and a tremendous help to all the counselors, especially the ward counselors, as they go through the day-to-day shuffle. But, well, Rob, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. I'm glad to see you on the council, and you've already pulled up your sleeves and really gone in with a huge effort to serve the residents. So thank you very much for that.
Well,
thank
you
for
for the
service.
opportunity. I appreciate it very much.
And to those of you at home, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned. Coming up next is my co-host, former counselor, Robert Katz, with City Councilors Joe Delano and Don Landers.
Knowing the costs and requirements of an account before you sign on the dotted line can prevent a complaint or hassle later. So read the fine print. Just because a bank account is advertised as free or no cost does not mean that you will never run up a cost. An institution is not allowed to advertise a free checking account if you could be charged a maintenance or activity fee. But your bank can still offer a free account and still impose charges for certain services, such as check printing, automated teller machines, and bounced checks. Also, ask if an attractive interest rate on a credit card or a deposit is really just a short-term introductory teaser rate. Keep good records by holding on to your receipts for deposits, ATM withdrawals, credit card charges, and other transactions long enough to confirm that your monthly account statements are correct. Also, keep copies of any contracts or other documents you sign with the bank, like loans and certificates of deposit. If there is ever a dispute or a discrepancy, you will have those documents to refer back to. This Money Minute has been brought to you by WMCT-TV and St. Mary's Credit Union.
Welcome back to Council Agenda. I'm Robert Katz, former Ward 1 City Councilor, and I have the pleasure with me this evening of having Don Landers, our newest Ward 7 Councilor, and Joe Delano, our newest Ward 1 Councilor. Welcome and congratulations on your recent elections.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Just to help the residents out a little bit, Don, if you don't mind, give them a little bit of geographic background as to what makes up Ward 7, and then begin to touch on some of the issues that are important to those residents.
Right. Ward 7 is kind of unique. It's north of Route 20 and it's south of Route 20. And it's really separated by Precinct 1, Precinct 2. Now, I grew up in Precinct 1. I mean, basically I was a sophomore in college, but I lived there until I got married. So I know that area quite well, and that's really Cook Lane to Farm Road, Church Street, Essex Street, and then Curtis Ave. And then in my neighborhood, Precinct 2, it's Hosmer, east of Hosmer and over to Miles Standish Simpson. So basically the both sections of the ward are basically the same, and they basically have the same concerns. Roadways, sidewalks, speeding, you know, whether it's Cook Lane or Miles Standish and so forth. And probably because I was in education for so long, both precincts are very pro-education.
Pro-school, and you're replacing what I would consider as a pro-school person myself too, Dick Toll.
Sure, that's
and
right.
Stuff. And
Right.
Dick came from the same school background, somewhat similar to yours as well. So it doesn't look like the ward made a significant change. They went from one school person administrator to another school
Yeah,
administrator.
it does seem that way.
But you also have the added benefit, Don, of being a businessman as well.
That's correct.
And clearly there's some business issues in this city.
Yeah, I can honestly say, you know, sitting on the council, there's probably no facet of agenda items that I haven't had some involvement with over the years. I mean, when they talk about RFPs and the bidding process, and they talk about financial reports, you know, been there, done that. So I had a lot of experience, a lot of involvement. I think the other plus, you know, I've had a lot of involvement with the department heads over the years. Not necessarily the ones that the current department heads, but those departments. And I think that's been a real plus. So when I'm looking for information or pursuing some information, I basically know where to go, and usually I know how to ask the right questions.
So even though you're a newcomer, your ward and the residents aren't going to really miss a beat because you know how to get things
Well,
done
I
already.
hope not, but yet there's always something to learn, and I think Joe and I have realized that sometimes there's something to learn how the process works within the council also.
Exactly.
Indeed.
Did I say that tongue-in-cheek? But I
Joe, really the same question. Why don't you geographically tell the residents where Ward 1 is? I know where it is.
Well, and I was going to say, Robert, I'll say it once. As you well know, being my predecessor and my good friend and mentor, and having held this seat admirably for 10 years,
the
Ward
questions
1,
are still going to get tougher, even though if you'd
we'll
be
see,
that nice.
yeah. Ward 1 is essentially the area on the easternmost part of the city, and it's on the north side of Route 20, and it really is bounded roughly by Sudbury Street, going around to Concord Road, and some of the neighborhoods on the west side of Concord Road, Gooddale, Vega, Woodland, in that area. And the issues for my area, number one, is we have a lot of areas that still don't have sewers. Ward 1 has probably 85 to 90% of the homes that have no sewer access are in Ward 1. And of course we have road work, et cetera. We also have a strong constituent base that supports the schools. And lastly, we have a number of seniors. And I think we really need to work a little bit harder on getting a senior center and getting them the services they need and deserve.
No, it is a pretty well diversified ward, as I learned over the years as well. And you're right in acknowledging the different pieces that make up the ward, because both of you have to learn to work with a whole bunch of different types of people, whether they be pro-school, whether they call themselves fiscally responsible. You have to merge all that, whether they be seniors who are on maybe a limited budget. All that comes into play, and it sounds like you're both well aware of that.
Well, I think the focus really has to be on listening to the constituents, finding out what services they want, and then giving it to them in the most efficient manner possible. Make sure that they get value for their money.
Get value for their money, and that simply means, can we keep the services in place and keep the taxes down at the same time?
That's right.
And I think you're both well aware of that. Don, going back to you, speaking of fiscal responsibilities, obviously you both have just gone through the budget process and touching on some of the capital bonds as well, but let's go back and talk about the fiscal process. What is an issue out there that you might like to see addressed in the next year or so as it relates to something that might save the city some money? I.e. something maybe I know you were interested in the past in recycling.
Well, you know, recycling, I think both Joe and myself, we could talk about that all night. I mean, we have to go there. It makes sense, but financially it makes sense that we have to get a program going. I don't know if we have to get into pay as you go or what have you, but we have to, if we're somewhere around 15 to 16%, we got to get that way up there. I think somewhere along the line, for every percent we save about $75,000. Right. Well, if we go up, 5%, that's pretty good money. I think that has to be a priority because it's good for the pocketbook, but it's also good for, the world. God.
And I think you and I were talking earlier, you can achieve a higher recycling rate. It doesn't necessarily have to be pay as you throw. It could be some kind of mandatory thing that you at least have one bin of recyclables out in front of your house. And so that doesn't mean you have to pay for bags or anything.
Right.
But you at least, if you get that bin out there, that'll increase our rate. And oh, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, you don't have to pay anything more.
I've mentioned to some of the committee members that I've talked to at different times we've got together, even if we just sometimes rode around on rubbish day and we gotta be careful littering, but give them some communication. Like, did you forget to put your recycling bin out today or something?
Right.
Just a reminder that, that we're watching them, but a friendly reminder that it has to be done.
Yeah.
So I think that would be one of my priorities, and people are looking for something to be done there also.
I know recycling was a big issue in my 10 years on the council with Mark Orem as well, and so I'm glad that you're trying to pick it up and continue to run with that, because I do think it's a savings for the city in the long haul. Councilor Delano, other issue actually, I had the pleasure of watching the city council meeting this past week, and I know there was a big issue as it relates to the Department of Cemetery, Forestry, and Parks. And I was just wondering, how did that issue come about, and what are some of the councilors trying to achieve by trying to address that whole process?
Well, I think there are some of us that are really dedicated to trying finding better efficiencies, and there's no better time than when you go through the budget process. One of the things I strongly support is the mandatory recycling. I think that can save us easily $500,000 to $800,000, if not more. One of the other areas that a few of us looked at was the way we do business, the way we provide services. The DPW does have certain services that lend themselves to being analyzed a little bit more easily, such that we can look at and say, gee, we have 4 people in the cemeteries department. They essentially do, not completely, but a lot of seasonal work, and as well as in the parks and forestry, a lot of lawn mowing, tree maintenance, etc. And when we look at the overall cost for these services, there's some question about whether or not we could provide those services in a different way at a better value to the taxpayers. And so several of us sponsored a ordinance to have the commissioner of the DPW figure out exactly what the costs are, what the duties are, and whether any of these functions could be done more efficiently. We don't know what the answer is going to be. Some of us may have preconceived notions that it will be cheaper to go out. Some think the exact opposite.
Right.
All we're asking for is let's have the information, have a discussion, and if it comes out that it's not a cost savings, then we can go ahead as we're doing.
Exactly. What committees, actually, Don, have you been appointed to this year?
Well, I think the number one committee has been the finance, and I think that was probably a logical committee to put me on because of my background being the assistant superintendent for business the last 13 years of my professional career, because I retired in 2001. The other one, I'm on public safety, which hasn't been too
Right.
active yet, But I think that, urban affairs and finance are as you know, I don't have to tell you,
are the
but
two
10
largest.
years, the
But
two largest.
You're on the finance committee.
Finance, and I've really enjoyed that, I think some people don't realize that back in the spring of 1990, I was appointed the financial officer for the city when Mike Hogan was mayor, and I held that position for 8 months, and then I decided to go back to the school department. I was on loan, but why I bring that up, it gave me good insight into the bond, and that was something new to me, because in the school department we didn't float bonds and that stuff, and I learned an awful lot from bond counsel and also from the Department of Revenue. They were wonderful, So that experience back in way back in the 90s, kind of helped me when we were going through the bonds here, It's been a lot of work. I've enjoyed every aspect of it, the bond part of it, the equipment. And, it goes without saying, and this is for people that are watching this program and they've watched me, I'm kind of quite pro, department heads. I like to refer to them as budget managers, and overall, that's what they are. I don't care whether it's the chief of police or the head of the fire department or so forth. They're managing a budget. A lot of their job is that. So I think when they present a budget or the mayor presents their budget and we talk, I can put myself in their position and I can see what they're fighting for. That doesn't mean I rubber stamp everything.
Right, but you understand, you have some understanding.
Along the lines, I think I've asked some good questions.
Around the programs that they want to maintain and the personnel that they want to keep. And Joe, you're on the finance as well?
I'm on finance as well, and wireless.
And wireless.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about wireless. Is there anything coming up there? I know that it has an opportunity to bring some money into the city as well.
That's true. We just had a meeting last night. What we were trying to do is to make sure that we utilize all of the city locations, because when these companies put towers or attach their equipment to, say, the Fairmont water tower or to Sligo Hill, the city brings in tens of thousands of dollars for each of those. Some of them are paying $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 per year. So we try and make sure that they utilize our locations first, that they do it in a way that's efficient and that causes the least visual disruption.
Right.
And for the others that are on private areas, we make sure those same things. And we also, they also pay a donation into our open space fund, which I think is something perhaps that you started way back when. And that money's building up and doing some good things.
And just remind the public as well that the money comes in from wireless, from whoever it may be, whatever carrier. And what does the city then do with that money? My understanding, it sits in a revolving fund, and then it gets to be used in that particular area of those individuals that were affected.
That's correct. So if there's things over by Sligo Hill to do the old water tower, money's been used from that particular fund to redo Stevens Park. And they've done a beautiful job with that. So really, the neighbors that have to look at these things, and they're a necessary evil, in a way, they get mitigated for that. Exactly. And we try and use those funds for those different areas. And I think that's a pretty fair way to do things.
Because we're running out of time real quickly here, maybe if each of you could take 30 seconds and just tell your residents one of the things that you hope to accomplish, I guess, really in the next year within your ward. Then you're on the clock, Don. So
Oh, okay,
You
I
want
go
me to
next.
first?
You can go first, Joe.
Okay. Well, I think for me right now is, number one, we have to finish up the sewers and roads. We have some residents that have the roads completely torn up, and they've been going through that for years, so we have to finish that. There are some areas around Sudbury Street and the environs that still have no sewer access, and some folks have real trouble with their septic systems. So hopefully we can get some of those things accomplished in the next year.
I applaud you and hope you continue to do that, obviously, as well.
As far as Ward 7, you know, the streets are going to have to wait a couple years, but, you know, I think it's up to me to work with the Department of Public Works and make some temporary repairs, whether it's a curbing or pothole or something like that. And I think the other, as I mentioned earlier, you know, they are the speeding on some of the roads, and, you know, the police department, they have set up Simpson Road, mile standards in some of the areas there. So I just really want to tell them that I'll continue to support them, and I'm always available to answer their calls or visit their houses.
Well, Councilor Delano and Councilor Landers, thank you very much for coming this evening. And as newcomers, it's clear to me that both of you have already gotten immersed in the various issues that are out there, and I'm sure you're going to do a great job for your residents, or I'll have more questions the next time you're on. Thanks again, and thank you for watching Council Agenda.